What's up, everybody? Peace. Just heads up, there may be some strong language in this episode. Ooh.
Some bad words.
I did a show on the Lower East Side. It just felt like an inner city lunchroom, and I felt like the white substitute teacher. I heard a kid at one of the tables go, "Yo, are you scared?" That's the worst heckle because he heckled my soul.
Hey everyone, this is Stretch Armstrong.
My name is Bobbito Garcia, a.k.a. Cool Bob Love.
You are now listening to What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito.
Bobbito, word up. And our guest this week is Neal Brennan.
Yes, this extremely funny man is best known as the co-creator of the legendary Chappelle Show.
Word up.
He executive produced Chris Rock's 2018 special Tambourine.
Hoo-ha!
He directed Inside Amy Schumer. He is that guy that a lot of the best-known comedians in the world ask, yo, is this funny?
Right. And he's also a stand-up comedian and has been doing that for some time and is really pushing that on tour right now with a show called Here We Go, 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 Neal Brennan and Stretch and Bob.
Dum diddy dob diddy diddy dob dob. I got to see him at Radio City for Chappelle's run that he had last year. And he really brought the house down.
He did.
He's, people know him as the dude behind the scenes, but he's going to be known just as much as the dude behind the mic.
Right. Did you sit in front?
Yeah.
Well, I was invited to the Chappelle Show second season first taping, and I was seated in front, and I was like, why am I up here? Because the stand-up comedians, in between the acts, they would have somebody come out, and I was like, oh man, my hairline is looking busted. Like they're gonna look at me. Like the Neal, was he cracking jokes on people in the crowd?
No, it was Radio City, and he had a spotlight on. It was dark. But listen, I know what you're getting at, because when you used to work at Def Jam, and I interned at Def Jam, we'd get invited to Def Comedy Jam back in the early days.
Sure.
And you know how it was. If you were a white dude in the audience, you were getting got. Right? Right or wrong?
Yeah.
I remember one time I was in the balcony in the second row, and I still got it.
Word?
Yeah.
All right, coming up next, your boy, Neal Brennan. Some things were meant for each other. Fries and milkshakes, selfies and duck face. And now, what's good with Stretch and Bobbito and Spotify? Yes, the same app that has millions of songs now also has thousands of podcasts.
On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite shows and discover new ones. To subscribe to ours, search for What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito, tap follow, and get every new episode delivered to you.
Podcasts on Spotify. They're streaming right now. And now.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. In 1980, with a few $1,000s in used dairy equipment, Ken Grossman founded Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Ken's award-winning ales propelled him from home brewer to craft brewer. Today, Ken and his family still own 100% of the company, one of the most successful independent craft breweries in America. More at sierranevada.com. And we are back. We are joined by a very, very, very funny dude, comedian, writer, producer.
I direct too.
And director. Excuse me, I knew there was one.
Thank
Hold on.
you.
Let me
Thank you.
Let me check out these cards. Yeah. No.
Thank you,
Stretch.
Stretch.
It doesn't say it there. Excuse me. Neal Brennan, welcome to What's
Thank
Good
you.
with Stretch and Bobbito.
Yes. Good to talk to both of you. This is how old I am, Stretch. I saw you DJ. This sounds like a 2000s Mad Lib, but I saw you DJ the Beastie Boys 9/11 concert at the Bowery Ballroom.
At Hammerstein Ballroom.
At Hammerstein,
Not Bowery
yes.
Ballroom. Yeah, that Hammerstein's a little more impressive than Bowery.
Yeah, at Hammerstein. Yeah, you do only do the best ballrooms. Yes. Nothing but the best ballrooms.
Neal, you were a writer on the Chappelle Show. You've directed TV Inside Amy Schumer. You're doing stand-up now. You did stand-up back in the day. I'm curious about the return to stand-up in this current Neal Brennan?
Well, I didn't really do it back in the day. That's the thing is like I did it a little bit during Chappelle's show, then I didn't for like 3 years, and I started in earnest in 2007 because the thing when you're in like showbiz or whatever you want to call it, especially when I was writing and directing, so much of it is pitching ideas and them getting rejected, and you kind of go like, I'm pretty sure I'm funny. Like, I feel like I'm funny despite the fact that I keep getting rejected by people less funny than me. So it was fun to be able to go on stage at night and go like, oh, right, I am funny. And then it took a few years to sort of get up to speed and get good at it.
Had the preparation of being the producer, director, how well did that fuel you being on stage in terms of your confidence on, to deliver in front of a live audience? 'Cause it's a complete different experience being in a boardroom.
I mean, your body has to get used to it. Like, your body has to get used to being in front of people. Like, and you have to be kind of a ham, like the thing about writers is they're generally comedy writers, self-loathing, sort of play small, and as a performer, you have to think like a comedy writer, but act like a performer. So I mean, you see it in hip hop all the time. Like there are guys that Swiss Beats or the best example being Kanye. The first time he did TV was on Chappelle's show, and the first 2 takes, he had his head down, looking at his shoes, and I before the 3rd take, I was like, Kanye, you got to pick a camera and play to it. And I said on some hip hop shit. If you watch like one of the G Think videos, Snoop's shy. Like, and Warren G is shy. Like, they're kind of like, Warren G like looks at the weed and he's kind of like, they're not commanding, they don't really own what they're doing, and that Kanye kind of suffered from that when he did him and Common did the food.
You want anything crazy? Michael Jordan in his first commercial with Spike Lee has no lines because at that point,
Michael Jordan didn't have a lot of lines in those commercials at all. Even in Space Jam, he doesn't have a ton of lines.
Right. It took him a long time to break out of that and feel like the commanding presence. I mean, I think that's just human nature, especially if you.
Yes.
In a comedy club aspect, I would think it's, it's kind of like playing ball at West 4th Street where there's going to be hecklers on the sideline and you're going to get called out if you're whack.
Yes. Yes, and thank you, Bobbito. I was called out for being whack.
At West 4th Street or at the comedy club?
I did a show, and you were right to heckle me, Bobbito. No, I did a show on the Lower East Side, 2008 or something, or 2007, and it was really dark. It just felt like an inner city lunchroom. It was like just midnight, and I felt like the white substitute teacher. And I went in and I heard a kid at one of the tables go, "Yo, were you scared?" And I was like, and in my head I was like, "Yeah, I am scared." They could tell that I was scared. And I got through it, but that's like the worst. That's the worst heckle because he heckled my soul. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like your shirt is whack. It wasn't like
Right.
He really saw me.
Yeah.
And really hit me in a very damaging way that even 11 years later I think about it.
So I guess that wasn't your best performance ever.
That wasn't great. But no. But here's the thing. He said it before I even said anything. That's what was so buck wild about it.
Oh my God. Wow. Neal, what year did you get to New York?
I got there in 91 for NYU Film School.
Gotcha.
Which I subsequently dropped out of after a year.
Yeah, well, we have that in common. I dropped out of Columbia to become a DJ.
I said this to you yesterday. School is a list of books that they tell you to read. That's what school is. And then you read them, and they go, "What did you read?" And you go, "I don't know." And then they explain it to you. So just get the list of books and save yourself $100,000. You really can. Kids, are you listening? You really can help yourself and save yourself a lot of money.
So while you were at NYU, you worked at a comedy club, right?
Yeah, I worked it was called the Boston Comedy Club in the Village on West 3rd.
And was that because you needed money, or you just really wanted to be around comedy?
My brother's a comedian, and I just liked comedians. And also, it was like, I'd be around film students during the day, and then comedians at night. And I was like, film students are the biggest jerk-offs in the world. Like the most pretentious douchebags in the world. And then I'd go to a comedy club, and it would literally be like 18-year-old Chappelle, 24-year-old Jon Stewart, 24-year-old Mark Maron, 22-year-old Louis C.K. And none of them were famous or popular, but they were all like funny. And I was like, I like this better. So I subsequently dropped out and started working the door for like $235 a week. But it was a good time. It's one of those things where you look back and it was a crazy time, and I'm grateful for it. But it was more about just like developing bonds with dudes. Like I still have friendships from that time.
Were there any women up and coming emerging comedians on the scene?
Sarah Silverman.
Oh.
So yeah, like I've known Sarah since she was 18 and I was 16 or something. Like I've known Sarah so long. She was the first person to notice when I started having hair on my face.
Wow.
Where she was like, "Oh my God, are you shaving?" Like I've known her that long.
Wow,
since puberty.
amazing. So
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about how, as a door guy at the Boston Comedy Club, you used to offer improvements on how comedians might deliver their lines and offer them, suggestions on how they might tweak something.
Yes.
Unsolicited.
Of
course, why would
advice.
anyone ask the door guy?
No, of course. I was shaggy. If you want to see some idea of what I look like, I posted on Twitter a clip from I wrote for the sketch show All That a couple years later. So 92, I'm working the door. 95, I work for All That. I'm in a sketch with Kenan Thompson, and I look like a greasy, grungy dude. And that was when I started making money. So you can imagine what I looked like when I was working the door. But I was pretty funny. So I gave Dave, most notably Dave, suggestions. And he was like, "I can't front. That's good." And he would use it, and it would work. And that was like, amazing, because just to get, even though it was sometimes it would be on TV. Like he did a joke we kind of came up with together on Def Jam. That was super cool. But those like little breaks you get when you're at that stage in your life or career where you're like, it means the world to you. That was a lot of that period. That's still the same job I have. That's one of the things I do now. It's like I still do, I'm doing stand-up, I'm on the road doing tours and Netflix and all that stuff. But I helped Rock with his last special. I helped Ellen DeGeneres with her new special that's coming out. That's kind of my job as a director. If I direct TV shows or movies or commercials, like I'm basically saying like, hey, you know what you should say? Maybe try saying blank. And it's just now I just do it at a higher level, I guess.
So you're feeding Dave Chappelle some humor, and he's taking it on stage. What's the turnaround where you're like just the doorman and the feeder to actually like, okay, me and Dave are now like boys, we're hanging?
We were hanging the whole time. Basically, the way it happened was I moved to L.A., so I ended up writing on the pilot for Singled Out. I then got hired for the second season of All That. Me and Dave are friends the whole time. He's starting to do well, movies, TV, all that stuff. And then I wrote a script for a movie that wasn't very good, but I had a meeting with this producer named Bob Simons. A couple weeks later, Dave goes in. He's got a meeting with Bob. And they're like, "Any ideas you have?" And Dave's like, "Yeah, I got an idea for a weed movie." And they're like, "Do you want to write it with somebody?" And he's like, "I am writing it with somebody already." And they're like, "Who?" And he's like, "Trust me, you never heard of him." And they're like, "No, who?" And he's like, "Neal Brennan is the guy's name." They're like, "We love Neal. He was here 2 weeks ago." Just one of those crazy things. Yeah. He was here 2 weeks ago. When can you guys pitch us this weed movie? We've never talked about writing a weed movie. This is as far as the conversation went. We saw Trainspotting. We're walking out of the movie theater, and Chappelle goes, you can make one of those for weed. I'm like, yeah, you could. That's the conversation. Months later, I get a call from Universe, from Bob Simon's office. Julia Dre at Bob's office goes, hey, are you guys writing a weed movie? And I'm like, yeah, well, weed movie. That's what we're writing. Meanwhile, never heard of it. And they go, when can you pitch it? And I go, I can pitch it in 1 month. Meanwhile, never talked to Dave about it. So then we have a month to come up with the idea for the pitch. We, of course, take the full month. We take the full 30 days. The night before, we have a pitch on a Monday. And on a Sunday, a Sunday, we just outline the movie. So we turn in a script, and they're like, we love it. You guys got to go to Toronto. And we're like, for what? And they're like, for scouting. We're like, what? Like, it was crazy. Now, having said that, our power was slowly kind of diluted over the period, and didn't end up being exactly what we wanted. But there are like periods in Half Baked that I think are really funny, and you can see like, oh, these guys. This is kind of like Chappelle Show, because again, we were just grateful. We were set, a $7 million movie when we were 23, having never written anything. It was like, yeah, all right, yeah, that seems fine. What, you're going to give us per diem, and we can go to the Brass Rail, the strip club in Toronto every night?
Take that, NYU Film School.
Mm-hmm.
Was your friendship with Dave a part of your entryway into hip hop, or was that just a function of you being in New York City?
No, you know what? My entryway into hip hop was my biggest introduction was obviously like the Def Jam, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, like that conglomerate. But when I heard Public Enemy, I heard "Don't Believe the Hype" at a basketball game, my high school basketball game. It might have been 86 or 87. And I heard it and I was like, wait, what is this? Like one of those things where you just go like, oh, all I want to hear is this for kind of like forever. And then I moved to New York, and it was like, it was 91. So it was like it was a huge year for hip hop in terms of it took a big cultural jump. I think it took a big artistic jump, obviously, also, but like there was a big cultural jump in terms of like it being taken seriously. Mm-hmm. And I also saw the value of like Def Comedy Jam and black comedy, for lack of a better term. I think when a lot of white people were like sort of either put off or scared by it, it just seemed like, no, this is good. Mm-hmm. This is the good stuff.
Going to hip hop clubs in the late 80s and early 90s, and when I would see another white dude, like we would kind of see each other, notice each other, and give each other like a shady glance, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, no, I remember Mike and Adam, the Beastie Boys, saying when they would see each other at hip hop shows, like in the early 80s at the Fever and stuff, they'd be like, screw that guy. Even though they were like exactly the same person. It's that like teenage self-loathing. Well, you have so much in common. Yeah, and then you give the white guy nod that black guys give to each other, right, in white places.
Right, except it's a competition. It's a competitive one.
Of course.
It's not like,
my man. There can only be one white.
Exactly.
It's a Highlander situation.
But then eventually, being the white guy that's actually writing for black voices, did you ever feel like you didn't belong, or that you had to prove yourself in any particular way?
I gotta say, I'm writing something right now with Kenya Barris, who created Blackish, and I feel like my value to black voices is, I think the best illustration of it is we did a sketch on Chappelle Show where Dave does jury selection. He's on the OJ jury, the Michael Jackson jury.
What about Michael saying it's okay to have children sleep with him?
That don't mean anything. I'm sure there's plenty of kids that sleep in the bed with their adults all the time and nothing happens.
So do you think Michael Jackson is guilty of the charges against him?
No, man. He made Thriller. Thriller.
So you'd let your children sleep with him?
No.
And that is that's verbatim conversations, basically. The logic that Michael Jackson couldn't have molested the kids because he made Thriller. It's literally just like going like, wait, what? Talk about that. That's a funny vein of logic that white people are not familiar with for the most part, but it is entirely understandable. For instance, the jury selection thing, because of what the justice system has systematically done to black people, you cannot prove anything to black people in the court system beyond a shadow of a doubt, because white people have just played dirty for so long. So I guess it's just a level of empathy that I might be good at, or seeing something from somebody else's point of view, which might be the Libra in me.
In 2014, there was a Comedy Central special titled "Women and Black Dudes," where you used the N-word.
I did,
but you
and I talked
guilty
about
as
it.
Charged.
Yes, yeah, no, that's true.
But you've since stopped, and so what was the transformation there?
I don't want to be like it's a Pryor, like a Richard Pryor thing. Like I went to Africa, and I finally the way I talked about it was about being called it.
I get drunk, hit your kids, and think to yourself, "No, this is me at my best."
Yeah, it's not your typical stand-up, particularly the mental illness and depression topics. I would have to think that either you're completely detached from those moments while you're on stage, or you're completely attached to them and you're feeling super vulnerable, super almost like naked on stage, and people are laughing. Is that something that you would encourage other comics to, that threshold to sort of experience and share?
If you have stuff you want to say that is difficult to say in just like a sort of joke format, do it that way. But that's the thing, is like, even there's this special on Netflix called Nanette, this woman Hannah Gadsby, and people are super threatened by it because it's like parts of it are super duper serious, so everybody's threatened by it. And it's like, look, man, not everyone has trauma, not everyone has tragedy, not everyone has. Some people are just like funny, sort of upbeat people. Just do the thing that suits you best. I'm not of the mind that everybody has to be revealing and stuff now. I think just do whatever you need to say, figure out a way to say it. And that was what was good. That's the victory of Three Mics. Is like, I had some stuff I needed to get off my chest, as it were, and that was the best format I could think of.
In Three Mics, you said you didn't have low self-esteem. You had no self-esteem. Just curious,
yes,
how that factored into your comedy.
I basically used comedy as like oxygen, right? In a room that was filling up with water, comedy and getting laughs and having a funny thought or a funny notion was the thing that would sort of keep me alive. And now I have more self-esteem than I've ever had as a result of the success of Three Mics. Because a lot of my self-esteem was tied into accomplishments, and a lot of my accomplishments were with Dave. I had like haters in my head, and between doing Three Mics and the week I wrote at Saturday Night Live when Dave hosted were big for my self-esteem, because it was like, oh, I'm pretty good, like I'm good at comedy. And then again, not in a way that's loathsome or I'm like walking around pounding my chest, but it's like, all right, voice in my head, you can shut the fuck up. Cause you're just wrong. You just sound like I always say like the voice in my head are like a caller into a late night radio show, but it's one of those guys who's like kind of who calls once a week, and the host is like sick of him, where it's like, Bob from New Rochelle. And he's like, yeah, I just want to say that, Neal, you suck. And he's like, dump the call. Dump it.
Haters in your head. I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had haters in my head. So like, it was just like very, very helpful in eradicating that. Not forever and not all the time, but mostly.
The name of your new tour is Here We Go. What new topics can we expect from
Here We Go,
Neal?
I do a lot of stuff about Me Too, in that I know the people. Like, I know Louis. I know Aziz. I like skip school at NYU to go work on one of Louis' films. I've known Louis since 91, 92. So, but having said that, I'm not like, and I'm defending him. I'm just saying, like, it's it's close to home. Like, I know, So, even the title Here We Go is about men watching so much porn that everywhere we are, we expect a porn to break out at any moment. So we'll be in our hotel room by ourselves, hear an unexpected knock on the door, and be like, here we go. Like we're just ready to go. So that's kind of the like, all right, it's on. Let's do it. I wasn't expecting it, but Semper Fi. And so that's about the stupidity of male entitlement and what we've sort of been like trained in some ways to do.
So Mel Brooks and Jerry Seinfeld sort of lament that the PC culture has been detrimental to comedy. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I don't really, the PC culture, I think.
And PC
I
meaning
see it,
politically correct.
No, yeah. Personal computer. I'm more of a laptop guy. The PC culture, to me, for the most part, it's like the least you can do. As Jay Leno said on Mark Maron's podcast, he said that when there were the pollution regulations in the 70s, all the American car automakers were like sort of dragging their feet and sort of sulking, and the Japanese automakers just did it. And they just did it. They were like, all right, these are the new regulations. That's not a big deal. We'll do that. We can. And they built better cars, and they got 15 years ahead of the American auto market. So I think with the so-called PC stuff, it's not that hard to, you know what I mean, to show like a modicum of respect to marginalized people. I don't think it's not ruined. It's just like, yeah. So the box got tighter. So can you be great in this box?
And creative, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As a guy who talks about race on stage, there's ways to do it. I talk about Me Too on stage. It can be done, and it can be done in a way that both sides kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like I hadn't thought of that. That's pretty true, and it's not. I'm not offended by it. I'm not offended by like I have a joke where I go like, sex is the most consequential thing we can do with our bodies, but we can't talk about it beforehand. We're like looking at a girl going like, you thinking what I'm thinking? And if I'm wrong, I'm going to jail. It's a recipe for at least misunderstanding. At bare minimum, misunderstanding. When it goes well, it's a misunderstanding. And when it goes poorly, it's sexual assault. So like there just needs to be more conversation because it's too many people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
Word.
We're going to take a break and come right back with Neal Brennan.
The following message comes from our sponsor, Capital One. Would you know if someone applied for credit using your Social Security number? If not, listen to Joe Whitchurch, head of the CreditWise app, talk about the new SSN tracker his team recently released.
While identity fraud is something everyone needs to be worried about, we want to make it easy and seamless for them to become aware of anybody attempting to use their identity without their knowledge or permission.
CreditWise is free for everyone, whether you're a Capital One customer or not. You can find CreditWise in your app or Play Store now.
Hey, everyone. If you enjoy this show, I think you'll really dig The Nod. It's a podcast that tells stories from Black culture that you won't hear anywhere else. They've investigated Beyonce's alleged ties to the Illuminati, tracked down Crime Mob for an oral history of the classic Knuck If You Buck, and uncovered the secret ties between grape drink and Black history. Trust me, there's something on The Nod for everyone. The hosts, Brittany and Eric, talk to celebrities about the things you'd never expect. They got Yara Shahidi to talk about what it's like to wear a do-rag on TV. They asked Michael K. Williams how we turn the tide of youth incarceration. And they got RZA to reveal the links between kung fu movies and the civil rights movement. Subscribe now to The Nod wherever you listen to podcasts or go to gimletmedia.com/The Nod. The Nod, a podcast from Blackness's biggest fans.
I'm Bob Boylan with the All Songs Considered podcast. 50 years ago, the Beatles made a mind-boggling double album. Hear the White Album as you've never heard it before. From demo tapes to brand new mixes. This week on All Songs Considered.
And we're back. This is What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito. And we're still here with our boy, Neal Brennan.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway,
thank you.
This is the fun part. This is the prize at the bottom of the Cracker Jacks.
It's not like the drudgery of the rest of this podcast.
I don't know if you were prepped for this, but
This is the part of the show that we call the impression session.
And it's pretty
Right.
simple.